I've recently come to terms with the need to do something very counterintuitive to just everything that I've been trying to do with any sort of non-dual pursuit over the last many years. The last time that I talked to my teacher, we had a break after I had what's considered a complete realization of self. It was about 3 months later that we touched base again, and I sort of wriggled my way around the words to say, I really doubt that I've had this experience, that I've had this realization. I didn't want to make it plain-faced obvious that I was expressing doubt, because I didn't want to disappoint him or myself or come to terms with bitter reality. There was an avoidance to it, but he said it's very common for people to still doubt the experiences that they've had because the mind is still acting as though there is this small self. There is this little tiny self of a human that has very hard boundaries in this materialist world. Obviously, the mind, it takes some time for it to catch up with these realizations because that's how it's been operating for so long. And he said that what he did years ago was that if he found that there was some conflict with that, he would just say to the mind, okay, fine. Tell me, what small self is there for me to be protecting? I've realized very strongly recently that I need to practice the complete antithesis of all this spiritual philosophy that I've been trying to follow, that I've been trying to make become real experience for me. Wherein I'm trying not to be this limited self, but right now I really need to practice. Okay, fine. Let's set clear boundaries of what I am as this small person. Let's do it. Let's lean into that as strong as we can. Really feel into being this small, limited human. And there are a few things that does for me. One of them is that I spend so much time trying to get the mind to come to terms with, no, you are not this limited self. You are pure unbound consciousness in a non-dual experience. I spend so much time doing that it can ironically put a lot of pressure on the mind that causes it to reinsert the idea of that small self. There's a counterintuitive and counterproductive result of really forced effort. So the reverse happens when I start saying, no, be this limited human. Suddenly, all these exceptions start firing off, and all these questions start firing off in the mind. Like, okay, where exactly is that boundary? Okay, fine, you set this tentative human body boundary, but that has limitations that I'm not going to go into now. I'm not going to go down the spiral of how the mind counteracts these ideas. But it ironically makes my non-dual perspective stronger. It gives me a break where I don't have to force the correct spiritual way of thinking. And it makes me realize just how unfounded the small egoic perspective is when I try to just entertain it. It's the same way that a good mind approaches an unfounded argument by just saying, okay, let me entertain the idea. Let me just keep asking you questions about this argument to clarify. And then eventually, the speaker has no choice but to admit some fundamental faults in that argument, if it really is unfounded. I don't want to reject anything that the mind does. be it spiritual or non-spiritual, because that itself is just a form of rejecting what is. True equanimity is being open to everything, which includes the least spiritual thoughts that you could think of. It goes back to a common misconception, about enlightenment and awakening and people of high consciousness, where they only think the most pure, godly, totally in line with the best spiritual teachings kind of thoughts. But in reality, a lot of it is just being okay with whatever thoughts arise. That thought is arising, that is what is supposed to happen. Thoughts are just kind of irrelevant. Enlightenment is not a way of thinking. It is an experience that is beyond thought. So thoughts don't even really matter. But they can feel like they matter when you try to suppress them. They become a big, strong, powerful villain when you start saying, I must think of this and not of that. And that goes beyond any sort of spiritual work. That's just, I think that we've all found that. When we've tried really, really, really hard not to think about something. And the thing is, the non-dual existence includes everything. So even thoughts of non-duality exist within a non-dual existence. Thoughts that say there are barriers and that everything is not just pure consciousness exist within pure consciousness. There needs to be a non-dual reality in order for these small, very dualistic thoughts to be. It's just funny. It reminds me of this. Somebody said that there was a scientific experiment done that it turned out that they made a mistake in it, but it seemed to disprove Einstein's theory of relativity. But it was measured with a device that is a relativistic device that follows the theory of relativity in the first place. So it just fundamentally doesn't make any sense. Yeah, thoughts that exist within within non-duality are thinking things that are very dualistic. It's like, then who cares? Because the bigger system is what's important. I think to expand your horizons at anything, sometimes you have to try the exact opposite of what you've been trying. In order to be able to jump higher, you need to get very, very comfortable and grounded and well acquainted with the idea of being down on the ground. And again, it's just so funny because that is the dualistic thinking of this small egoic self was just a way of things for so long for me. So I've worked so hard to get away from that being my default that now I need to get a little bit more reacquainted with it. Getting acquainted with all things of various levels of truth and falsehood. Just have the result of giving you better grasp on reality. So every once in a while, just practice being the least spiritual person that you possibly can. And when you're at the grocery store and you see something that says free sample, take one, go against all the most holy scriptures and take two.